assign roles within the application is kind of what you're saying from an administrator. So an administrator can create an employee, and the administrator can then, from the creation of the employee, decide what role they get. Is that what you're asking to do?
Yes.
Yeah. So let me show you how to do that. So here's my employee record. Let's go ahead and create a couple of roles. So we have employee, we have anonymous, but let's create a moderator role or an ad. We'll call it manager, which is an elevated permission employee.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so a manager role. Now what I typically like to do is inside of the employee, what I will have is a select boxes here on what role we want to assign them. So I'll say select boxes here, and I'll say roles, and then we'll have employee, and then I'll have manager. Okay, so this is just quite simply is just going to be used to trigger the role assignments. And if you don't actually want to store the values, you can also even say uncheck persistent. But in this case, it's not really adding that much data to the payload, so I'll just keep it as persistent. The next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to need to add a couple of actions that conditionally trigger themselves based on what they selected inside this form. So I'm going to go to my actions here, and right now I have a role assignment that's going to add authenticated, but what I would like to do is also conditionally assign role assignments based on that what is selected there. So I'm going to do role assignment. And now what I'm going to do is for a new resource, we're going to add the role, employee, but I only want to execute this if the roles, actually we need to do this in a different way because this enter value here, they may have more than one checked. I don't think there's a way that I can deselect that. Yeah, I just hit backspace and it deselects it. So here I'm going to use this right here where I'm going to say, it's going to look something similar to what we have in the placeholder here. The only difference is because we're using select checkboxes, the syntax is a little bit different. Instead of it being an array, it's actually a Boolean object. It's an object and it's Boolean. So right here we'll say execute, I think it's data dot roles. So execute, then we refer to the field, data roles, and then employee. We basically want to execute this whenever that's true. So I can just do a bang bang and that'll actually take whatever fills in there and it'll make it and turn it into a Boolean. And so now I'm going to hit save action there. And actually I also like to change the title here. So I'll say employee assignment. The next one will be manager assignment. So I'm going to do a role assignment here, and this is going to be new resource, add role, manager, execute when data roles manager. Now we need to test this. Let me do employee, this is going to be manager. I typically like to use Postman when testing it because Postman will give you the raw data coming back and you'll get to see if we're actually getting the role assignment. So let me just go ahead and delete my test employee that I have here. And under project settings, I'm just going to create an API key so that I can use it with Postman. So that's under API keys. Now I have a key that I can work with and I can do whatever I want inside this project. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to programmatically, or using the API, I'm going to create a new employee. So I'm going to open up Postman, and this will also tell me what roles have been assigned to that employee. Under API, I'm going to copy the submission endpoint here. We're going to do a post. Under headers, I want this to be X token. That's how you use API keys. I'm going to copy my API key. And excuse me for going fast, but I am recording this, so you'll be able to rewatch
No,
this.
that's fine.
And then from here, I just want to change the body to be raw and make sure that it's JSON. And the payload is going to be data, first name, and let's see, the resources, employee, first name, last name. Oh, we can select a company, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. I just want to see if it's working. I don't think any of these are required, so I'm going to be able to see if my role assignment's working just by doing roles. And we'll make this first one, we'll do test manager. We'll make this first one a manager and employee false. And I just want to send this and see what it comes back to me with the role assignment. So I'm just going to hit send. So that created a new employee. And right here we see we have two roles. Let's just go verify that those are the correct roles. So under roles, it looks like my employee role is 0D13. I should not have that in here. 0D, I don't. I should have the manager role, which is 323. So there that is, 323 right there. So now I know I have the manager role. And then the last one I should have is authenticated as well. So in all cases, they're going to get authenticated. That's 0D11, 0D11. That works. So let's try a different. So now we're going to do a test employee. And in this particular case, I'm going to make them false and true and hit send. And now you'll see I've got the authenticated and the employee role. And then, of course, if I did both of them true, which I'm not sure you would ever have a case where you do that, I hit send. Now they have three roles.
Okay.
So doing that is one thing. One thing to keep in mind is permissions. Okay, you can't allow people to essentially assign themselves permissions. So you have to make sure that you keep track of this access here. Now you'll see that employees cannot create their own resource. Ensure that you have that in place because you don't want employees to create themselves and basically assign them as a manager. Now what we typically do in applications is we will have either if you're logged in as an administrator, but maybe you want managers to be able to create employees. And managers can decide what employees are onboarded as well as what employees get, what roles they get. So in that particular case, you could, under create all, you could assign manager. What's great about this is you can actually make it so that whenever you have create all, the difference between create all and create own is create all allows you to create a submission and assign it to somebody. So you can assign the owner. That we have this, if you look in Postman, you'll see that there's this owner flag. This is the owner of the submission. And the big difference is, and you'll notice in this particular case, the owner, this is actually because I used my API key, I bet this ID matches my Form.IO account ID, because when you use API keys, you're authenticating yourself as the project owner. Just a little bit of a tidbit there, but the big difference here is a create all submissions would allow the manager to assign the owner of that resource. And another thing is you could also do what's called self-access permissions. So now we have this chicken and egg problem where I want to assign the owner to the submission that I'm creating. Does that make sense?
You want to assign the owner to the submission? Is that what you said?
Yeah, because so people are going to be logging in as an employee.
Yes.
Whether you're a manager or a regular employee, you are going to be authenticating yourself as an employee. The way Form.IO works, in fact, there's not another platform I've seen out there that does it the way we've done with user tables. We don't actually have a concept of a user table. a user is really a submission in a resource or a form. And you can authenticate yourself into any resource that you want. So really, when you say I am a user, you're basically saying I claim I am logging myself in as a submission. And it just so happens that that submission has roles associated with it, which allows me access to do other things within the project. So it's a very unique implementation that allows a lot of flexibility. However, it's somewhat confusing because now you're authenticating yourself as a submission. So whenever I log into my application, I'm logging myself in as one of these guys. Okay, so here I'm basically logging myself in as one of these guys. Now I have to basically tell myself I should have access to my own record, right?
Yeah.
However, I cannot create my record. Otherwise, if I could create my record, then that means I could assign myself roles. So the way to lock this down from an access perspective is to only allow managers to create all access, and then also enable what's called self-access permissions, which allows you to essentially say, I want you to take the ID of the submission itself, which is right here, and I want you to assign it as also the owner of the submission. So really you're giving it self-access. And by doing that, whenever I log in as an employee, and I say this is my submission, I am giving myself access to my record. However, I can't edit the roles. I can't edit my roles because there's no submission, there's no action that allows me to edit the roles on a update. In fact, I should probably go in here and make sure, yeah, you see this is only getting executed on a create. So the only time that you can actually assign roles is during the creation of the submission, which the employee cannot create his submission. Only managers can create it. Because I know it's